Welcome back to the Daily Poem here on the Close Reads Podcast Network. I'm David Kern. Today is December 3rd, 2019. Thanks to everyone for your patience. I took off the last week or so on this podcast for Thanksgiving break, just to recharge, so to speak. And now that we're into December, I've got a slew of December, Advent, Christmas, end of year themed poems coming over the next 27 days or so. I'll probably try to even record a few for Christmas Eve and Christmas Day ahead of time, get those scheduled to get posted for you. But today's poem is by an English poet named John Clare. I read one of his poems pretty recently, and as I mentioned on that episode, John Clare was the son of a farm laborer who became known for his depictions of English country life and for his sorrow at the end of that way of life that he was commemorating and celebrating. He lived from 1793 to 1864. The poem that I'm going to read today is called Winter Walk. This is how it goes. The holly bush, a sober lump of green, shines through the leafless shrubs all brown and gray, and smiles at winter, be it air so keen with all the leafy luxury of May. And oh, it is delicious when the day in winter's loaded garment keenly blows and turns her back on sudden falling snows, to go where gravel pathways creep between arches of evergreen that scarce let through a single feather of the driving storm. And in the bitterest day that ever blew, the walk will find some places still and warm, where dead leaves rustle sweet and give alarm to little birds that flirt and start away. So this poem, Winter Walk, is a sonnet. It has 14 lines and it's an iambic pentameter, although this poem is a little bit more loose with some of the rhyming than, say, a Shakespearean sonnet is, or the rules might suggest that it ought to be. And I love how it kind of sets up, using that sonnet form, relationship of sorts. There's a little bit of romance going on here. There's maybe even a little bit of romancing going on here, some wooing, if you will, because it says here, the holly bush, which is a sober lump of green, shines through the leafless shrubs all brown and gray and smiles at winter. So the holly bush is kind of, it's a sober lump of green. It's kind of a sober is a very interesting word there. It's kind of a non-romantic word, an unromantic word, but it's shining through the leafless shrubs. It's like peeking its eyes through there and smiling at winter, welcoming it in a sense. And it says that it's got the leafy luxury of May in its nature. And then the poet tells us that it's delicious, that the winter is delicious. That's not often a word. Maybe there's delicious food in winter, soups, chili, stews, things like that. Cottage pie, pie. We don't necessarily think of winter as being a delicious season. In fact, it's sort of the opposite of that, right? It's kind of barren. Spring, summer, fall, those might be delicious because of harvests and flourishing and flowering. We get a lot of interesting contrary takes on the things that make the season what it is. And in fact, it says that in the bitterest day that ever blew, the walk will find some places still and warm, where dead leaves rustle sweet. So there's, even when it's cold, the walk finds places that are warm and still, and that the dead leaves are rustling sweet. There's like a whispering is almost how I think of that. They're kind of whispering sweet nothings, so to speak. And they're giving alarm to little birds that flirt and start away. The leaves, I imagine what he's saying there is that as someone is walking, the leaves themselves are giving a sort of warning to the birds, because as you walk on them, they're crunching. And so there's this whole relationship, this interaction, this circle of life, to borrow a overstated metaphor, I suppose, that is essentially a relationship, that there's a romance in all that. Romance is in kind of like a love story, and all those elements working together. So I love the way he uses the sonnet form, which is often, especially in Shakespeare, a romantic form to express this sort of romance that's underneath the sort of dreariness of winter, that's sort of hiding behind all the barrenness. So I'll read it one more time. This is John Clare's Winter Walk. The holly bush, a sober lump of green, shines through the leafless shrubs, all brown and gray, and smiles at winter, be it air so keen with all the leafy luxury of May. And oh, it is delicious when the day in winter's loaded garment keenly blows and turns her back on sudden falling snows, to go where gravel pathways creep between arches of evergreen that scarce let through a single feather of the driving storm. And in the bitterest day that ever blew, the walk will find some places still and warm, where dead leaves rustle sweet and give alarm to little birds that flirt and start away. This has been the Daily Poem. Thanks so much for listening. Be back tomorrow with another poem for you.